Thank you for joining us on this episode of Legal Angle with Emmanuel the Law Olawale. Today, I'm having a special guest with me who is going to talk to kids, children, young adults, and parents about social media, sexting, when what feels right goes wrong. Her name is Judge Kimberly Cockcroft. She is currently the administrative judge of the Franklin County Court of Common Pleas, the General Division. Welcome to the show, Judge.
Thank you so much, Mr. Olawale. I am delighted to be here with you and with your viewing audience.
Yeah, I'm delighted to have you on the show too. And with the fact that you've had a very busy schedule and you still make time to come on the show. Thank you.
Thank you
Can
so
you,
much.
yes, can you tell us a little bit more about yourself?
Absolutely. Well, as you've indicated, my name is Kimberly Cocroft. I am one of 17 judges who serves for the Franklin County Court of Common Pleas General Division. I've been here now for almost 13 years. I was first appointed to the bench in 2009 by Governor Ted Strickland. I've gone through two election cycles in 2010 and 2016, and the voters of Franklin County were gracious enough to allow me to continue to serve in this capacity. I am actually on the ballot for 2022, but gratefully, I am running without opposition in this election cycle. And so, if I vote for myself, I am assured another 6 year term. So, I'm very grateful for that. I am born and raised in Columbus, Ohio. I graduated from Bishop Hartley High School. I then went to the Ohio State University. I have a bachelor's degree in psychology, a master's in sport management from Ohio State, and then I received my Juris Doctor degree in 2000. Prior to becoming a judge, I served as a law clerk for Justice Alice Roby Resnick at the Ohio Supreme Court. I then was in private practice for 4 years as a business and employment litigator. And then I transitioned to the office of Governor Ted Strickland to serve as his deputy chief counsel for civil matters. I did that for 2 years. And so my responsibility was to represent the governor both in state and federal court, to coordinate litigation strategies with the chief counsel at the state's 26 executive agencies, and then to draft executive orders and directives from the governor, giving instructions to all of the state's agency. And of course, I also worked on any civil matter on which the governor wanted legal insight and advice. And so after that, I've been here now for almost 13 years, and I would say this is probably the best job that I have ever had. It allows me to interface with the public, and you get to see immediately the impact that you are having, not only on the persons that appear before me, but the broader community. And so I am honored to serve, and I appreciate the support that I've received from the citizens of Franklin County and beyond.
Oh, thank you. The fact that you are running unopposed testifies to the good work you're doing for the people of Franklin County. Thank you for doing that. And what was your own life like growing up in Columbus?
My life was amazing. My parents, who are wonderfully, they're still alive. They've been married now for almost, 57 years, approaching 50, 56 years they're approaching. My dad is an entrepreneur who's owned a business in the Milo Grogan community for 50 years. My mother was employed by the city of Columbus until her retirement. And so my life was wonderful. My parents did not have the opportunity for higher education just because of the era, the time during which they were born, but they were insightful enough to recognize that, as Malcolm X said, education is the passport to the future. And so they ensured that my siblings and I had an opportunity to receive a higher education. And so we are a close knit group. I'm a member of a local congregation, Tridestone Missionary Baptist Church. Dale D. Tucker Sr. is my pastor. Bishop Jerome Ross is the pastor emeritus. I've been a member of that congregation for my entire life. It is also located in the Milo Grogan community. And so my life is one that is deeply entrenched and connected to the community. And so the position that I hold now really is almost kind of a natural outgrowth of my family's lifelong connection and service to community. And I get to serve in a different and hopefully more impactful way.
Oh, thank you. Your parents must be very proud of you, raising a daughter whom they give the key out of mediocrity. Education was the key. How does it feel to be the first attorney in your family?
How does it feel to be an attorney in my family? It's amazing. I'm the only attorney in my immediate family. I'm the youngest of the sibling group. And so it was my mother's encouragement because she wanted a lawyer in the family, because none of my other siblings were lawyers. She had one final chance with me, and I decided to go to law school. My actual professional aspiration was to be a professional sports agent. I wanted to represent professional athletes, which is why I got the master's in sport management. And during that process, my mother found a joint program between Capital University and Ohio University where you could get a master's in sports administration and a law degree in 4 years. Well, I didn't want to travel to Athens to get the master's degree. So I kind of created that same construct at Ohio State. So as I was wrapping up the work for my master's degree, I had already started law school at Ohio State. And I remember I had to ask my torts professor if he minded my missing one of his lectures so that I could attend commencement for my master's degree. So my parents are thrilled about having a lawyer in the family. There is, of course, a professional benefit, but there's also a practical benefit for both of them if they have questions about certain issues as relates to my father's business, personal business, family business, the business that my father has run for 50 years. I'm able to provide some insight and guidance to them. So there is a practical aspect to what I do that has been helpful and a moment of pride for my immediate family.
Yes, I'm sure you're a blessing to your family. And your parents are my personal MVP. They remind me of Nigerian parents. Nigerian parents don't take no for an answer. You've got to do it. Masters, JD, just name it.
I
And
apologize, Mr. Olawale. On your question, there was a little bit of a breakup, and so I want to be certain that I am answering your question, sir.
oh, no problem. Yeah, I was just saying that your parents are like my personal MVP. They with what they've done
Yeah,
with you, making sure that you have that key to education to get the breakthrough. Yes. Then
yeah.
you
I tell
go ahead.
I apologize, sir. You can continue. I apologize for interrupting.
Oh, no problem. Yeah. Then you studied sports management. Did you play sports in high school or middle school or college? What inspired you to want to represent athletes?
I apologize again. There's a little bit of a disconnect in the feed, and so I didn't get the totality of your question.
My question was, you studied sports management. What inspired you to go into that field? I know you wanted to represent athletes. What inspired you to want to do that?
When you're younger and you're thinking about what does my life look like? How is it that I can support and sustain myself and what it is that I want to do? It's a lucrative field, if we're honest. I talked with some agents when I was thinking about doing that professionally. And back then, when I was thinking about it, the agents with whom I spoke would say that the agent would get 5 to 7% of whatever the negotiated contract was. And so I thought, wow, I should really be able to do well for myself if I could negotiate that kind of deal. But what I learned in doing more research is that most agents are not lawyers. Lawyers are constrained by the code of professional conduct. There are things that we can do, there are things that we are prohibited from doing. And I did not want to run afoul of the code of professional conduct and risk my license in an effort to represent professional athletes. And so it was just an evolution of thought about what feels good and organic to me in terms of a professional pursuit. I love writing, I love researching, I love speaking. And so, in this evolutionary process, a traditional practice of law became for me the more appropriate conduit. Not that I still don't love sports. I wasn't an athlete, but the business side of sports always interested me. But this has been the thing that I think where my passion and my purpose converge with the work that I'm doing now.
Thank you. You mentioned that you didn't want to run afoul of the law. From that statement, one can see that you are a very careful human being who has lived a life of righteousness, if I can put it that way. We can say the same for a lot of kids out there right now, because if you have done some things in your past, it will have come to haunt you when the governor decided to put you on the bench. So they may have passed you over. So now, we have kids who are posting things on social media, texting each other, thinking that, well, I'm still a kid. It wouldn't matter. If you have done something like that in the past and it's on the internet forever, you probably wouldn't be a judge right now. So, how can you tell kids who are out there aspiring to be where you are right now on how to manage social media?
Well, I think, Mr. Alawale, that the primary phrase is that you have to manage it responsibly. And in looking at this issue, what I learned is that studies show that between 20 to 25% of young people admit that they have sent nude or lewd messages. Those are just the kids who are admitting what they've done. I would hazard the guess that the number is probably bigger than 20 to 25%. And so there has to be a recognition that, as you said, what these decisions live with you. They follow you wherever you go. And when you're young, because I've been there, we've been there, you don't imagine yourself at a certain age. You don't imagine yourself at a certain place in life. You don't imagine yourself having access to certain opportunities. It is a very immediate and present and right now existence. You don't look ahead to what the future looks like. And so when you're not looking ahead, there is sometimes the temptation of not managing that present moment in the most responsible way, not recognizing, as you've said, that these images, these text messages live in perpetuity, even when children think they have deleted them, even when we as adults believe that we have um, gotten rid of any evidence of what we have said or done, those images, those messages can be recaptured. And what I share with young people is that as a judge, frequently I have law enforcement personnel who come to me with warrants, with cell phone numbers, with Snapchat videos, for Facebook messages, and they are asking providers of services to give them that information to help them facilitate an investigation. And I sign those warrants. When you think that things are gone forever or they're just in the cloud and they're never going to be seen again, law enforcement have the ability to pull down those images and they can impact young people and adults in ways that are countless. And so I think that the primary message is to manage responsibly. I always tell my niece and nephew, think 3 to 4 to 5 steps ahead of the immediate decision that you're making. If you can't imagine living with the consequence 3 to 4 5 steps down the road, then you probably shouldn't be making that immediate choice today.
Thank you. I don't want to assume that everyone watching this or listening to us understand or know what sexting means. Can you please describe it?
Absolutely. Sexting is sending sexually provocative messages or images through the use of technology. So that could be email, that could be cell phone, that could be video, that could be webcam. And the word sexting is actually a combination of the words sex and texting, but the definition is expanded so that it's any kind of information that is sent using technology. It could be email, again, webcam, video. That's what sexting is.
Thank you. And is there a particular law, either in Ohio, that you are aware of that prohibits teenagers from sending such messages?
There is no law specific to sexting, but the danger is that are laws that relate to distributing material involving a minor, nudity oriented performances, pandering sexually oriented matter that involves a minor. So if you are distributing or possessing those images, that's a felony offense in the state of Ohio, and it's a felony of the second degree. Ohio has five felony levels: one, two, three, four, five. One is the most serious, five is the least serious. And so a felony of the second degree in the state of Ohio generally carries a presumption in favor of prison. And so I'm confident that teenagers, and candidly, again, adults, are not thinking, if I send this image that involves a minor in a nudity oriented performance, or shows a minor engaged in a sexual act of any kind, that that is a criminal offense. A 116-year-old sending that to another 16-year-old with whom they believe they're in a relationship. It's just hard for me to believe that a 16-year-old would believe they have a deep and meaningful relationship, but they do, and I'll respect that. But them not understanding that sending that image creates a legal consequence. I think it's important for me to share that information. It's important for parents to hear that information. And it's important for students and young people to understand the potential legal exposure that exists when sending those kinds of images.
Thank you. And let's talk about social media because right now you have a lot of those: Instagram, Facebook, TikTok, just a lot out there.
Mhm.
Is there an appropriate age for students or kids to join social media? Do you have a recommended age?
I was telling a group of parents this at a local high school. I just don't encourage parents to give their children social media. There are so many perils and pitfalls and dangers associated with young people using social media. Now, the caveat that I would make is that if parents have a way of monitoring, of checking social media pages, seeing and viewing what their young people are watching, and you want to give your young people an opportunity to socialize with other young people, because I understand how peer pressure works. You want to be like your friends at school, you want to have a TikTok or a Snapchat. I get that. But there has to be a level of oversight that the parents are willing to provide to ensure that the usage is appropriate. Because what we know is that the algorithms that are created through social media watch and track what young people and adults are watching, and then they provide content, or suggest, I will say, content consistent with what is being watched. The other challenge is that as young people are attempting to socialize using social media, we know that there are people who create troll accounts, fake accounts, who may attempt to engage with young people. And we don't know whether these are adults. We don't know whether these are people who have a history that demonstrates violation of young people in some kind of way. And so you have to be really careful about the things that they're watching, the people with whom they are connecting. And so every parent has to make his or her own decision about what is appropriate and what is not appropriate. But again, Mr. Alawale, you and I know that there are adults who cannot manage social media responsibly. And so to ask a 13, 14, 15, or 16-year-old who hasn't matured physically, we know they haven't fully matured mentally, to manage the responsibility of social media, I think it's a lot to ask. And so I don't encourage it, but every parent has to make his or her best decision for their child.
Thank you. And social media has become the modern mall, hall, photo album, just name it. It's become that social space where people connect, even with people that they might never meet in person. So, how can parents manage their children going online and who they're meeting?
There is a lot of technology that exists currently that allows parents to monitor. the activity of their young people online. And I'm not necessarily endorsing this company, but I just want to give an example. There is a company called life360.com that allows parents to monitor what it is that their child is doing, not only on social media, but in every space where they are moving and traveling with a cell phone. So, for example, if you allowed your child to go to Easton and you check this Life 360 application and you see that they are actually at Polaris, you have the ability to interface with your child and say, hey, I'm watching, you're at Polaris. I said you could go to Easton. And so there's a lot of technology that exists that allows parents to monitor their children's activity. And here's the other thing, Mr. Alawale. I'm going to imagine that it's the parents who have purchased the cell phones, the data packages that go on the phones. Parents, you have the right to ask your child, let me see your phone. There is, for some reason, some hesitation from some adults to really engage young people in that way. And I can tell you, when I was growing up, I was very clear about the line with my parents. I was the child, they were the parents. They would support me, but they were not my friend, and I could not treat them the way that I would treat and or interact and or talk to friends. And so I think parents have to reestablish that parental line. They have to tell their young people that they have a responsibility to protect them, to ensure that they're making good choices. And sometimes that means a surprise inspection of a cell phone. That's totally okay. And I think that parents have to be okay. It's not disrespecting their boundaries, it's not disrespecting your young person's space. It's ensuring that predatory forces aren't luring your young person into a situation that might be difficult for them to escape.
Thank you. And even in the modern world, you have most teenagers or young adults. They're much more savvy when it comes to the internet, social media than their parents. And in some instances, parents wants to monitor the children, but the children are way ahead, more sophisticated. How can parents keep up?
I think that parents have to do internet research. And I'm so glad, Mr. Alawale, that you mentioned about students being savvy. As I was doing research on this topic, and I was looking through the most popular apps that young people are using, you can find those. You can just do popular apps for kids, and it will give parents a laundry list of what those popular apps are. But one that I found, and with the young people with whom I'm speaking, the parents with whom I'm speaking, they weren't aware of it, it's the calculator app. One would think that this is a standard app that, like, I use in the grocery store to figure out how much something costs per ounce, but it's actually a warehouse for nude and lewd images. You can input a certain code and then you can store these images. And so while parents might think, oh, it's so good, my child has calculator app and they're doing this for calculus or trigonometry or algebra, it's actually a place where those images are being stored. So parents have to work to be as savvy um, as their children. You can't assume or presume that your child is doing exactly what you've counseled and encouraged them to do. There are other influences that are introduced in lots of other ways and lots of other places. And so there is this continuing obligation and responsibility to monitor what your children are doing and to make yourself aware of how technology is changing and the ways in which information that isn't in your child's best interest can be warehoused and stored.
Thank you. Parents, you can hear what the judge said. Trust, but verify.
Exactly. Yes, yes.
Is there a correlation between social media and the exploitation of children?
I believe that there is. We know that there is an increase in the number of cases involving human trafficking. And that goes back to the conversation that we had a little earlier about social media algorithms, what information is introduced to children based on what it is that they are viewing. And that also goes back to the issue of people catfishing, pretending to be one kind of person. Maybe they introduce themselves as another 16, 15-year-old girl or boy, but they're actually a 35-year-old man or a 35-year-old woman who is attempting to lure this young person into a dangerous situation. There have been cases, I can't think of one specifically, but I know of cases where young people have met an older person on social media, have agreed to meet them in person. They've traveled across state lines to meet this adult person, and it turns into a situation that could have cataclysmic, life ending consequences. And so I think the area is ripe for issues associated with the potential for human trafficking, which is another reason, as you've said so appropriately, trust but verify.
Thank you. And you mentioned catfishing. I understand what it means, but there are a lot of parents or students watching this who may not know what that term means. Can you explain what catfishing means?
Absolutely. Catfishing is introducing yourself to someone on social media under the guise of being not actually who you are. So to make it make more sense, I would engage with you on social media if you were, let's say, a 16-year-old boy. I might introduce myself as a 16-year-old boy, recognizing I'm actually a 49-year-old woman. And so you start to develop a relationship with the person to whom you're attempting to make this connection. There's a level of trust that is created. That level of trust may inspire the young person to share information that he or she may not have shared, knowing that I am actually a 49-year-old woman. And then there starts to be a relationship that is developed, an emotional attachment that is developed with this person whom you have never seen. What we know about catfishing is that, sometimes people ask, can you send me a picture of yourself? And what the catfisher will send is something that is consistent with what they are representing. So again, I'm a 49-year-old woman, but I send a picture of a 16-year-old boy or a 16-year-old girl. And there is no way for the person who is being catfished to verify the accuracy, the legitimacy of the information that is being received. But again, because you've created this emotional cyber attachment and relationship, the person is inclined to believe that what they are seeing, what they are hearing, what they are feeling is actually true and legitimate. So it's another dangerous place and a dangerous space, which is why parents have to monitor what their young people are doing on social media.
Mhm. So it is a kind of using false identities to bait somebody that is consistent with their own age, sex, or whatnot.
Exactly. And that level of familiarity allows for a level of trust that more often than not is misplaced. And I think, having gone through 2 years of managing protocols associated with the global pandemic, young people didn't have those ordinary opportunities and outlets for socialization and interaction. And so social media became the way in which they engaged with people whom they know and people whom they didn't know. And I think that lack of in person socialization created an opportunity for potentially dangerous encounters on social media.
Thank you. Is there a correlation between sexting and child pornography?
Children viewing pornography or children being the victims in child pornography?
Children being the victim. Yes.
I think that there could be a correlation. If you're talking about sexting, if you're talking about sending nude and lewd images, the outgrowth of that is how those images are then disseminated. What I always tell young people is that when you send that image to the one person to whom you are connected, that person could then send the image to everyone to whom he or she is connected. And then that group of people could send the image to everyone to whom he or she is connected. How that shows up in real time, I'll give a broad example. I had a case that involved a defendant who pled to pandering sexually oriented matter involving a minor. Those are nude and lewd images and videos. The facts of the case is that this defendant had 50,000 images and videos stored on their computer. I didn't review the images. I have no idea of the sum and substance of the young people who were included in those images and videos. And so there is no way of knowing if a sexting photo, if an intimate moment is included in that universe of 50,000 images and videos. And that's the danger of sexting. You don't ever know where that image, where that video is going to land ultimately.
Indeed. Can minors be charged with a crime for sending inappropriate messages or images?
Yes. So let me talk a little bit about this distinction between my court. My court, the Court of Common Pleas General Division, primarily handles adult cases. The General Division Domestic Relations Juvenile handles juvenile cases up to the age of 21. If, however, the court goes through what is called an amenability hearing, and this is not my bailiwick, but I think I understand the system well enough to speak to it. They can undertake an amenability hearing based on the seriousness of the charge to make a determination about whether that young person can be rehabilitated by the age of 21 or whether he or she should be bound over to the adult court. I have had cases that involve juveniles who were bound over to adult court. I've not had them specific to charges of pandering sexually oriented matter involving a minor. That could just be a function of how the cookie has crumbled and that case has not come before one of the judges in domestic relations and juvenile court. But I have had children, 15, 16 years old, who have been bound over to the adult court based on the seriousness of the charge. And here's the bottom line for me: why even take that chance? Why allow your future to be in the hands of someone who has to make a strictly legal determination? They're not going to look at what an amazing student you were, what you've done in terms of your community service, who your parents are. They're looking at a charge, and that charge creates a snapshot of who you are and what should happen to you, which then, of course, impacts the course and trajectory of your entire life. So that's how I'll answer that question.
So the charge alone is the first impression that the kids give to the judge or the prosecutor. So, and there's no way to make a second first impression.
Absolutely no way. Of course, that is also impacted by whether or not the young person has prior juvenile adjudications. I'm sure that that factors into a consideration of amenability. But again, you don't even want to subject yourself to all of those moving variables for somebody to make a decision and a determination about the direction in which your life might go.
Thank you. Yeah, some students might say, well, I'm not taking any photos. I'm not the one sending it, but someone forwarded it to me and I only forwarded it to somebody else. Is that a problem?
In a word, yes, that is a problem. If you are distributing, which is what you're doing, if you're forwarding a photo, you are distributing sexual matter. And that's a crime. At the low end, it could be there was, I think, a charge called matter involving a nudity oriented performance. Please don't quote me, but I think that that is one of the charges that might be involved. That might be a lower level felony, maybe an F3, but still, you're subjecting yourself on the low end to maybe 9 to 36 months in prison, up to a range of 2 to 8 years in prison. And so, I tell young people, if you receive that image, go immediately to an adult. Um, Tell them what has transpired. Be honest about what has happened. There's no danger in being honest about the fact that you received something. Maybe it was questionable. Maybe you know you shouldn't have gotten it. But if you keep it and don't say anything, or if you send it, you're creating a bigger problem for yourself because it's really a series of dominoes. And if one domino falls, everybody else falls. Put yourself in the best position so that you have the fewest consequences to manage.
Thank you. Yeah, talking about sexting and students, we focus mostly on young kids, high schoolers, middle schoolers. But then We have students who are adult, students in college, postgraduate students, and things like that. What is common among those is a situation where two people are in a relationship, they decide to record their sexual experience, then they break up. Then one person either threatens to or sends those images to others. Is there a legal ramification of that situation?
There's absolutely, and I please forgive me for not knowing the technical name of the statute, but it relates to revenge porn. What is essentially revenge porn?
Revenge.
Have ended a romantic or intimate relationship with someone, and then that person disseminates what you believed to be just an expression between those two persons involved in that relationship. That is a criminal offense. It is a felony criminal offense, and so people relationships create high levels of emotion, both in the relationship and if the relationship ends. But you've got to learn to manage those emotions because you don't want to endure a criminal justice system process because you are angry that the relationship is over and you've decided to share or to disseminate something that was shared within the confines of that intimate partner relationship with other people. That's a crime. You could be punished. You could become a convicted felon for not being able to control your anger and or your emotions.
Thank you. And there's this nebulous situation when it comes to age, especially teenagers dating teenagers, because the age of consent for sex in Ohio is 16. So a 16-year-old can date an 18-year-old and it wouldn't be a problem. They can have sex and things like that. But is it legal for the 18-year-old to text with the 16-year-old or have their nude pictures, exchange nude pictures?
Is it legal for an 18-year-old, even though there is the possibility to have the intimate relationship, that person is still considered a minor for purposes of disseminating that sexually oriented matter? you know, I just don't do it. I don't even know how else to say it. It's just a bad idea. And if I tell young people, if you have to parse out, well, if I do it this way, then this could happen. But if I do it that way, then the other thing would happen. That should be your first clue that it's something that you should not be doing at all. If you are parsing out what the potential consequences should be, that is the first red flag, clear signal that what you're doing is not a good idea. And even if this 18-year-old and 16-year-old are in this consensual, sexual, intimate relationship, if there is a transmission of those images, that is still a felony charge.
Thank you. I know young adults like to nibble around the hedges of rules. So I'm gonna
Right.
I'm gonna ask you some questions so that I can get this clarified. And I want you to either tell them whether it's appropriate or not appropriate, legal or not legal. I'll give you Uh, some examples. A 19-year-old female uses a cell phone to take a nude photo of a 17-year-old boyfriend after he asks her to do so.
After he asked her to do so,
Yes.
that's not legal. That's not
Okay.
legal.
And can you
And
tell
I
them
wish
why
I had,
it's not?
I wish, Mr. Alawale, I had printed the exact statutory language. And what I may do, my phone is on silent, but what I may do is pull up the statute because I think it's important for people to hear the exact language so that they're clear about what it is would cause them to find themselves in a situation that they don't want to be in
Mhm.
necessarily. And I wish that I had been more thoughtful in bringing that information with me, but I'm going to pull it up now, and then I'm going to read it so that everybody can understand precisely what you could do. And I think probably the most important word in the statute is minor. That's the most important word. If you are dealing with someone legally, now, providing consent and how the law views you as an adult are two different things. So if you are below the age of 18, legally, you are considered a minor. If you are doing something with a minor, if you are sending pictures, if you are taking pictures and transmitting those, The statute impacts you and that choice because it is specific to the treatment of minors. So I'm going to find that language so that I can share it with your viewers.
Thank you. So while you're doing that, let me just see if I can have you multitask because I know
Yes,
you're a judge that does that anyway.
I can
Okay.
do it. I'm going to try.
Yes. What happens in a situation where a person receives a nude image, they didn't ask for it, and they kept the image, and it's still the image of a minor. So can the difference be, well, I never asked for it?
If you didn't ask for it, that's sounds like what you're describing sounds like pandering sexual oriented matter involving a minor. Defendants who are charged with that offense haven't necessarily asked for the image. Now they've stored the image, and maybe the issue becomes how the image is stored. That's kind of a legal argument that defense counsel might make. The fact that you didn't request it may not be outcome determinative. It may be what you do with the image once you have received it, which is why I always encourage young people, tell somebody if you've gotten this image and you didn't request it, you don't want it warehoused and stored on your phone. You want to be honest about the person who sent it to you. You can't worry about snitches get stitches, because it's either you jeopardize your freedom and your future, or you potentially jeopardize your friendship. And I can't say that somebody who honors you as a friend would send something like that to you, understanding or even not understanding what the potential consequences would be. So, in that situation, I don't know necessarily that the fact that the person didn't request the image is outcome determinative. It's what that person does once they have the image. If they're storing it, if they're warehousing it, if they're not letting anybody know what they've received, I think potentially that could create a problem. But again, that's an issue of statutory interpretation, how the lawyers might argue a case. But I will read to you, once I find broadly the issue related to pandering sexually oriented matter that involves a minor or an impaired person. It's 2907.322 of the revised code. And what it says is that no person with knowledge of the character of the material or performance involved shall do any of the following: create, record, photograph, film, develop, reproduce, or publish any material that shows a minor or impaired person participating in certain activities that I won't um, illuminate here on social media. And so the operative words are creating, recording, photographing, filming, developing, reproducing, or publishing. In the example that you gave with the young person, and then there are other sections associated with that particular provision. And the particular example that you provided, it doesn't sound as if that person might be subject to penalty um, unless they are in some way storing the image. And again, these are like dicey, close call issues. And there would have to be, for me, to make a legal determination. If I were the judge hearing the case, I'd have to understand the entire factual predicate surrounding that issue. I always encourage people to err on the side of caution. If you have received that kind of image, tell an adult, tell law enforcement, because you don't even know if that image is a part of something broader that has bigger implications that could have more significant consequences.
Thank you. You've heard the judge. So if you receive an image like that, regardless of your age, just don't store it. Talk to somebody. Tell law enforcement if you have to, because otherwise it can get you in trouble. And then talking about young people nibbling around the edges, some believe that if you send a photo of a minor without the face, that that could be okay.
That is not okay. What the young people with whom I'm speaking, I tell them the image is sent from a phone, a computer with an IP address. Everything is traceable. You're not absolving yourself of potential responsibility, accountability by doing just a body shot without the head. Everything can be traced back to someone or something. And if it can be traced back to you, there is the potential for consequences. And so I don't want young people or adults to be too clever about how they manage themselves, how they manage those images and the decisions that they're making. Everything can be traced back to some owner of that thing from which the image was sent.
Great. Are there specific social media platforms parents should be concerned about?
All of them. If your young person is on social media, if your young person is on social media, you need to familiarize yourself with those platforms. The young people I talk to, they say that Facebook is for older people. They don't use Facebook. They like IG, Instagram. They like Snapchat. They like TikTok. They like WhatsApp. Um, there are a lot of more popular apps. I think those are some of the most popular for young people. But again, you've got to be paying attention to what they are using. And you've got to familiarize yourself with the functionality of those different apps so that you can help your young person make a really responsible choice. But those that I just listed are some of the more popular. Those are the things that I'm hearing from students when they're talking about the technology that they're using.
Thank you. And how can parents have these difficult conversations with their children?
I think you just have to lean into the conversation. It's the same way in which parents have difficult conversations with their children about bullying, about anxiety, about depression, about making positive choices. You have to be the parent. You cannot see the responsibility of being the adult in the relationship, even if your child is a straight A student, even if your child is doing community service, even if your child attends a house of worship or has some level of faith awareness, any child, any adult can be subject to the whims and the wills of outside forces who are attempting to undermine that foundation that parents have created for their children. And so you just have to ask the question. Maybe it's not a pointed question. Maybe, how are you doing? Are you on social media? What kinds of things are you experiencing? Are you comfortable with what you're seeing? Do you mind if I take a look at what you're doing on social media? I ask students that when I go and speak with them, raise your hand if you would be totally comfortable with me looking at what is on your cell phone right now. And you see the kids kind of go, maybe not. I'm going to put my hand down. And I tell them, if you're uncomfortable with me looking at the content of your phone and I don't know you and you don't know me, then you've got to know and you've got to believe that your parents would likely be super concerned at least, super horrified at most with what is on your phones. So parents just have to have those difficult conversations, and more often than not, even if your child doesn't immediately respond, children want to know that their parents are concerned about what is going on with them. They are looking for an opportunity to have those conversations. And so parents can't be afraid of what they might hear. That's another thing that I would share. You can't be weirded out and, angry about what they might share with you because you don't want to close the door of communication. And so parents may hear some things that are super uncomfortable, super awkward, super not what you were expecting, but you've got to give your child the latitude to be honest so that they always know that they can come to you if something really serious is happening and it's something that you need to know and that you need to address quickly.
Mm, thank you. Parents, you heard what the judge says. When they come to you with that information, don't freak out. If you freak out, if you freak out, they're not going to come back the next time.
Right, right.
Yeah. You became a judge when you were in your 30s, and it's one thing to become, to be a judge. It's another to be a young female black judge. What was the experience like for you to having to feel that, I don't want to call it difficult, but it's unique shoes?
It is certainly unique, and I'll give you more context. Um, Again, I was not the conventional selection because I don't have a political background. And so I was an unknown commodity for those who work in political spaces. And so the governor's selection was unique in that regard. And sometimes people think because I work for Governor Strickland, I had the inside track. I didn't know him before I got the job, and he didn't know me. So there was no inside track that I had. There were people that were higher on the list of selection. And so when I was selected, there was a bit of controversy and consternation about my selection. And I will never forget that there was an article in our local newspaper, and the title of the article was Court Picks Take Heat. And it pretty much highlighted why I was not the best choice for the court. And there was actually a quote from one of the judges who was serving on the court at that time, and he pretty much said that I would be slowing down the processes of the court because of my lack of familiarity with the operations of the court. And so for me, I leaned into those concerns. I won't call them criticisms because no one, again, really knew me. So I leaned into those concerns, and I made it my goal to make what they were saying not true. And so I met with all of the 15 sitting judges at the time. I got scripts. I talked with seasoned litigators at the courthouse. I watched proceedings. I studied. And I tell people I didn't have a remedial law degree. There wasn't a special sticker on my license that said, she's kind of a lawyer, but not really. I had clerked for a state Supreme Court justice. I had been in private practice. I had represented the governor of the state and done serious legal work both in state and federal court on his behalf. So I was confident in what I could do. And I was anxious to demonstrate to people that the governor's selection was a great selection. And so after a while of being here, that judge who had those initial concerns came to me and apologized for what he said. And we just had a wonderful relationship until he left the bench. And he was regretful of those remarks and not giving me an opportunity. And so I think that as a Black woman, as an ethnically diverse jurist, I was sensitive to and aware of the challenges that exist in terms of someone like me showing up in this professional space. And it's a reality that I've managed for all of my professional life. When I was in private practice, I was the only Black lawyer in 6 offices. And so I became the representative of Black people. I was responsible, well, not responsible because I refused to do it because you're just not going to assign that to me. I don't account for all Black people, but I became the face of Black America. And sometimes it's exhausting, candidly, to have people presume that you don't have the acumen, the aptitude, and the ability, and you're constantly having to prove that you are worthy of the experience and the opportunity. But now, 13 years later, I've never been afraid to lean into the truth of my experience. I think that as I get older, I've become more vocal about what it feels like and what it looks like for me to operate in the sphere. And I just speak candidly about, the impressions, the misimpressions, I will say, that people have about persons who look like me. For some people, one person may be assertive, and that's a good trait. But if I demonstrate that same level of assertiveness, sometimes it's defined as aggression or being angry. So the things that are celebrated and supported and encouraged and lauded in others get a different name when I do it or when you do it. And so it's figuring out how to manage those circumstances with dignity, with professionalism, but also course correcting misinformation about who I am, what I do, what I know, and then how I'm going to be treated. I'm not going to be disrespected. I'm not going to be talked down to. I'm not going to be minimized or maligned because of my race or my gender. I'm a duly elected judge in Franklin County. I've been that for 13 years, and the same level of respect that my colleagues receive of majority culture is the same level of respect that I expect to receive in this position. And I think people understand that about me. And, I've just had a wonderful experience.
Thank you. And you are also a lifelong Christian. You go to Thrystone Baptist Church and you are part of the choir.
Yes. Yes.
Yes. What has that singing experience been for you?
Singing, I did my first solo in church when I was 3. And my church did this album called Sunday Morning at the Stone. And there was another album that we did. And my first solo was Jacob's Ladder. And I think my parents still have the record. And so, singing is a way for me to just express who I am, to give honor to God, who has just blessed me in so many unbelievable and unexpected ways. It's an expression of my faith, it's an expression of what I believe. And so it's just really a way to connect with other believers, but it's also a way for me to connect with the community. I'm involved in a chorus called the Harmony Project. It is a nonprofit organization that uses music to meet the socioeconomic needs of disadvantaged members of the community, people who are transitioning from homelessness to housing, restored citizens, young people at various high schools across our community. And so we do big concerts. We've done concerts at Nationwide Arena. We've done them at Columbus Commons, at the Ohio Theater, at the Columbus Convention Center. We had to take a little bit of a sabbatical with COVID. It was difficult for us to stay connected, but we are reigniting and reengaging with Harmony. And we've got some exciting things on the horizon. And so it's just a way to connect with other people. Singing is just a way to connect with other people, to express what's in your heart. Music is just a universal language. Everybody can connect with something in a song. So that's just what I do to kind of decompress when I'm not here.
Thank you. Music is a connector of souls,
Yes.
and you connect souls,
Yes.
especially with the divine.
Yes. Absolutely. Absolutely.
And talking about social media, with your Facebook post and sometimes Instagram post, you are a fashionista. On Sundays, you post this selfie Sundays, then you attach words of inspiration or words to encourage. What inspires you to do that almost every Sunday? And those are good pictures.
Thank you. And it really kind of started off almost as a joke. I love shoes. I just have a thing about shoes. I would rather have a new pair of shoes than anything. Like my purse can be raggedy, my outfit can be kind of raggedy, but if I have a new pair of shoes, I just feel like a brand new woman. And so it was almost a joke. At church, people would say, "Oh, you should take a picture of your shoes." And so I just started creating these picture collages. I don't generally like photos of myself, which is why this is so curious to me, because I just don't like pictures of myself. And so I thought I would attach just some kind of inspirational something to go along with the pictures. There's really no rhyme or reason to what I talk about. I may ask God, give me something to share with people today, or I may be doing work, or I may be in church and something comes to me that I feel like I want to share with people. And so I'll share it. And then the pictures, it was just kind of a gag almost. But now people are like, "Are you going to post your selfie Sunday? Because we want to see what shoes you got on today." So I'm like, "Okay, I'll post." But yeah, it's just a way to stay connected. That's lighthearted because oftentimes people see me as Judge Cocroft and don't realize, I'm still a person. I'm still Kim. There are things that bother me. There are things that make me sad. There are things that make me angry. I'm just like you. I just have a little bit of extra something that I'm responsible for managing. And so it's a way to just to humanize me and to stay connected to people so that they understand, hey, we're all dealing with the same stuff. We all have the same kinds of feelings. We all have those moments of doubt and uncertainty and just anxiety and just concern and worry. And so I try to reflect that with people. I often say that I'm committed, connected, and concerned about our community. And so those posts are just a lighthearted way for me to stay connected to community.
Thank you. Because of the kind of position that you are, people just see you as if you're not human. So you have to humanize yourself to say, "Well, I'm still king."
Absolutely. Absolutely.
And talking about you connecting with the people, what would you like people to remember about you when they think about Judge Kimberly Cockcroft? You know, what would you like them to remember about you, your personalities?
I think probably the biggest thing that I would want people to remember about me is that I cared authentically. I think sometimes people get caught up not necessarily as related to this position, but if they are elevated to any position of respect or import, you get caught up in the glare and the limelight of the position, and you do things sometimes out of a desire to be seen or to be celebrated. I don't necessarily care if people see or celebrate me. I want them to know that if I did something, it was because I cared authentically. I wanted them to be well. I wanted them to be successful. I wanted them to feel appreciated and seen. And so I want people to remember that I cared authentically. I want people to know that I am doing what I fully believe to be my purpose in life. I didn't even know that this would be the work that I would be assigned to do providentially, but I feel like I am operating in my purpose. Um, and that I want us all to win. It sounds kind of hokey and corny, but there's enough room for us to all win. We don't have to select and create social hierarchies where people are entitled to certain privileges that other people can't access. We can all win. We can all be successful. We can all celebrate the fact that you are doing this podcast, and we can also celebrate somebody else who may do another kind of podcast. There's room for everybody at the table. And so that sense of community and belonging is super important to me. And I hope that people will remember that I worked to facilitate and to foster a sense of real, meaningful community.
Thank you. And we spent almost an hour with you talking to kids, talking to parents, talking to students about the dangers of social media, sexting, and texting, or things like that on Legal Angle, which is the community legal podcast. What does comment on Legal Angle means to you?
It means awareness. It means interaction. It means exposing people to the nuances of the justice system about which they may not have been aware ordinarily. This is such an incredible service, Mr. Olawale, that you are offering to the community by bringing in judges, lawyers, other experts. There is often a disconnect between the justice system and the communities we serve. And so I think lifting the veil, bringing people behind the curtain to see what we do in real time, how the system works, how it doesn't work, what we can do, what we cannot do, is an invaluable service to our community. And so I want to commend and celebrate and appreciate you for taking the time. This is an investment of time away from your practice, away from your family, away from your own community obligations, to do this for all of us. And so I want to thank you for making this investment into our community and giving people some insights to which they may not have ordinarily had access. So thank you for what you do for our community.
And thank you for coming onto Legal Angle and taking time off your busy schedule. And we have to round up now. So I thank you for coming on the show. And I'll be looking forward to your selfie this Sunday.
Thank you so much for having me. It has been my pleasure to be with you on today. Thank you so much.
Thank you. And for those of you watching us at home or on your phone or listening to the podcast, we thank you for joining us for this on this important episode. Until next time, stay blessed. Bye for now.
Bye bye.